Okay, well, it's a little bit after 7. I'm just going to get started. This is just a really, really quick 30 minutes. I'm going to talk about the equity that you have in your house and the potential that your 3% rate or your 3.5% rate might be holding you back. So first I'm going to go through the presentation that I put together, and then I think I have a little bit more to say after that. So let's get started. I'll just show it to you really quickly. Okay, let me get back to the beginning here. Sorry about that. Okay, so the 3.5% rate trap is something that sometimes realtors will refer to it as the golden handcuffs. And the reason that we say that is when you have this really low interest rate, it feels a little bit like you've won the lottery, but it can also be trapping you in a home that's not right for you, or it could be causing you to make decisions that are maybe not the best ones for the long term. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, if you have that rate and you're never letting it go, I mean, you're not alone. Millions of homeowners have this, and they've decided that where they are is good enough. They're going to stay put. Maybe they're in a house that's too big. Maybe they're in a house that's too small. Maybe they don't like where they live, but they're finding it very difficult. And this is a big financial decision. So it feels like this could be a poor decision to go from a 3.5% rate to something that is a little bit higher. And this is a common fear. I mean, if you sell, you are probably going to get a loan in the 6.5 to 7% range right now. And people who are downsizing think, man, I'm stuck in this house forever. Like, I'm never going to be able to get out of this because my rate is so low. I don't owe that much. My mortgage payment is manageable. I'm just going to stay in this big house. And you begin to feel trapped by that house. So, here's what people don't realize. When you look at the finances behind it, your mortgage payment is not your total housing cost. And I think people know this, but not a lot of people do a really full budget. And so you're not looking at it kind of in a pie chart like this. So when you look at this pie chart, you can see that your mortgage payment is actually only a small portion of the pie, maybe about a third of what your total housing cost is. And then you've got property taxes that, depending on where you live and how big your house is, that could actually be even a larger piece of the pie. And then there's maintenance. And this is the one that people don't account for because the standard for that is 1% of the value of the house per year for maintenance. You may not spend that every year. So you may have a year where you don't spend 1% in maintenance, but then maybe 2, 3 years from now, you're going to spend $20,000 on a roof, or you're going to put in a furnace for $15,000. That's where that number comes from. Over time, it averages to 1%. You're going to pay more utilities as you have a bigger house. If your house is too big, you're going to pay too much. And then you've got some of these other things like your insurance is going to be more lawn care, snow removal, and then an emergency fund. And obviously, I'm talking about if you have a big house and we're going down to a smaller house, or that's what you're talking about doing. I'm going to hit some other scenarios towards the end as well. So if that's not your thing right now, don't worry about it. We'll talk about a couple of other things too. So here's my first example. This is a situation where client of mine. Oh, I'm just seeing that you guys cannot see the presentation. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I'm just sitting here talking and not showing you guys anything. Let's go back. Sorry. All right. Thanks, Kinsey. Let's see here. There we go. Now we see it. Okay, perfect. All right. So just to go back a little bit, this is the beginning. This is what we were talking about, and I had gotten there's the pie graph and had gotten to this slide. And basically, a client of mine wanted to downsize. She had a big house in Bethlehem. That's what a lot of people have. They have, they raise their kids. They have a four-bedroom colonial, two and a half baths, couple thousand square feet, and she purchased in 2016 for $350,000. Now the market went crazy. We got a lot of value over a short period of time. So her current value was $575,000. And of course, over that time, she'd been paying her mortgage down about 10 years. So she only had $220,000 left on her mortgage. And with that 3.5% rate, her monthly mortgage was about $1,300. So she's thinking to herself, I'm never going to be able to buy another house for $1,300. Here I am. I have this big, beautiful house. It doesn't make sense for me to move on to something smaller. Here is kind of a breakdown of what she might actually pay on a monthly basis. So you can see we have the mortgage, that's the principal and the interest. We have the taxes, homeowners insurance, the maintenance that I was talking about, utilities, lawn care, etc. That brings us to about $4,000 a month, just a little bit more. So about $49,000 a year. So now that her kids are gone, she doesn't need four bedrooms. So if she downsizes to a two-bedroom ranch, it's going to be less square footage. The purchase price is going to be less, 375. You can definitely get a nice two-bedroom home for 375. So she's going to put a down payment of 225 from the equity when she sells her house, and her new mortgage is going to be only $150,000. So even at the new current rates of 6.75, which is even a little bit high. It's gone down a bit since then. Her monthly mortgage payment is now only $972. So when we look at the numbers, we're going to look at all the same things: property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, etc. Now her total per month is only $2,800. So that's 33 and some change per year. That's a lot less. Well, look, if we look at them side by side, we're looking at 49,000 versus 33. It's about almost a $1,300 savings per month, even at the higher rate. And that's only just the finances. I mean, if you're looking at this, if you were just looking at the payment, you've got $220,000 at 3.5%. That's 988 per month. And this is just the mortgage, not the rest of the stuff. And if you borrow that smaller amount because you've used the equity to pay some of that down at the higher interest rate, you're still a little bit less at 972. This is the part I really want to spend a little bit more time on. The math is the math. I mean, you know, you're going to have your own numbers, and we're going to talk about, the things that you should look at in order to calculate that. But it's really the hidden costs of staying that I think are most important. So when you're in a house that's not the right house for you, you have all the additional time maintaining, cleaning, and repairing a larger home. It takes forever to clean. You're cleaning rooms that you haven't even gone in years, maybe. You're going to be heating that whole house, so you're paying to heat the whole house. And just really the extra mental load of carrying that house. The roof's going to need to be replaced, this, that, and the other thing. And then there's an opportunity cost, which is hidden. So, what can you do with that extra money? But not just the money, even if all things are considered, even if your finances work out to be almost exactly the same, what can you do with the extra time? What is the opportunity? What is the emotional opportunity? And what is the life cost to staying in that house? So, if we're talking about downsizers, could you buy a home in an HOA? We're going to talk about that in a future seminar a little bit more in depth. But let's say you bought that two-bedroom home in an HOA. They remove the snow, they cut the grass, they take care of all the maintenance. You never have to think about replacing the roof. So your 1% budget for repair is now your HOA fee. But when you want to go see the grandkids for 4 weeks, you don't have to hire a lawn guy and try to get somebody to come and shovel snow if you go in the winter. You can travel, you don't have to think about it. So there's an emotional and a life opportunity cost that's missed when you do that. The rate that you have is worth protecting if you love your home, You can comfortably afford the cost. You have plans for the space. Maybe you plan for your kids to move back in. Maybe your parents are aging and you're going to turn some of the space into an apartment for them. If the maintenance doesn't stress you out, maybe that's something you enjoy doing. And then, of course, if moving would disrupt your life, your best friend lives next door, you like to walk your dog in the park down the street, then obviously there's no reason for you to leave. But your rate is not worth protecting if you're maintaining rooms that you never use, if your total housing cost is straining your budget, if you're worried about stairs or maintenance. And I'm going to tell you that, I'm selling houses to people who are in their 40s and 50s, and they do not need they don't have any problems, any physical limitations or anything, but they're thinking to the future. And more than anything, they're saying to me, Randall, I don't want to move again. So they're going to buy maybe a ranch or something that could be converted or something that has a first floor bedroom so that they don't have to worry about that 20 years down the road or later on. Your rate would not be worth protecting if you'd rather travel or simplify your life. And I'll tell you, when you're young, it's all about gathering things. And when you're older, it starts to become about getting rid of things. And I just feel like there's this trajectory to life that you're, kind of growing things in your life when you're young, you grow your family. And then as your family starts to grow and your children get older, then you start to feel like you don't have as much attachment to the things anymore. And you want to have that freedom to do the other kinds of things that you want to do. And then, of course, if you're only staying because of the rate, that's not a good reason to stay. A good example of this is if somebody said to me, Randall, I really want to put a marble countertop in my bathroom, but I have a row home and I'm just not sure that I'm going to get the value out of it. And I'll say to them, well, when are you going to move? Well, I'm probably going to stay here for another 20 years. Okay. Is the marble bathroom because you want it or because you're worried about your resale value? Sometimes your own personal enjoyment is the reason that you make a decision. So I think it's important while we talk about the financial aspect of it, it's not always the only aspect. And I like for people to understand that there are other reasons. And even though this is probably your biggest investment, there are other things to consider. So, really quick, if you want to figure out how to do your total cost, all you do is add up all your current monthly housing costs and then just go online and see some of these right-sized homes, or a different home that you're looking. Maybe you want to move from one location to another. You grew up in the country and you want to move to the city and take public transportation. I don't know, whatever flips your switch, but you can find those homes, work out some of the numbers, estimate what it would cost, use that 1% for, budgeting for repairs, and then compare the two numbers and see how it feels. A lot of people are surprised. And when it comes to the rate, we kind of have a saying. We always say, you marry the house and you date the rate because rates are constantly changing. So you're not going to move from one house to another as often as the rates are going to change. So you're really not going to miss out if the rates ever would go back down. I mean, and they could go up at some point. Your 6% rate could be that rate that everyone wishes they had. Here's a little snapshot of what's going on in the Lehigh Valley. So I have current rates at 6.75. You can get lower rates than that depending on your credit. That's kind of an average for a 30-year fixed, but it does not look like rates are going to go back to 3%. I mean, that was really a very special something that happened after the pandemic. So the average four-bedroom colonial is going for about $600,000. I mean, if you're looking at new construction, there's nothing new that's selling for maybe less than seven, most of the places. And the average right-sized home is much less than that. It's only about $388,000, and they're spending about 22 days on the market. So again, your homework for this, if you're following along with the series, is to pull out all your bills, add them up, find some right-sized homes. Doesn't have to be the perfect one, just something that you can use to calculate the expenses, and then estimate your new total costs and see what you think about the numbers. Here's another story. This one's just really, I mean, it's very similar to the other one. And the only difference in this story is that these people stayed longer than they wanted to. So, this is a real story. I've changed their names a little bit, but I had a couple. They owned a house in Bucks County. They said, we know our house is going to sell fast. They had a plan to use their equity to buy an a two-bedroom in a ranch in an HOA, and that was the lifestyle that they wanted to live. They wanted a place with a tennis court, etc. And they didn't want to leave the 3.5% that they had. So they stayed, they stayed, they stayed. And when they finally moved, they couldn't believe that they waited so long. And they really felt like they lost that time because they were ready. They were ready the first time. Okay, so, we can talk about your rate if you ever want to talk about this with me, but I want to talk about a couple of other things when you have this 3.5% interest rate, because it doesn't have to be just about do you buy or do you sell or what do you do with this rate. And I see, Kinsey, I know that you just bought a house and, good on you. You've got your first investment property. So you're not really interested about downsizing, but what you might consider is what can your equity do for you? So when you have a low rate like that, yes, it makes it very desirable to rent that property out. Your mortgage payment is less than what you can rent it for. And your expenses. That's obviously what every investor wants to do. But even if it's your family home, that might be something that you want to consider. If you've got a 3.5% rate, do you really want to sell the house? The only time you're losing that 3.5 rate is when you sell. So if you don't sell, you still have it. And what can you do with it if you don't want the house? How's that work out? Well, you could rent the house. You could, depending where you live, it could be a short-term rental. So if you're planning on moving to Florida because that's where your grandchildren are, you could keep the house, rent it as a short-term rental if that's allowed in your area. It'll stay furnished in that case, and it'll be available for you when you come back to town. That's one option. The other option is to think about what can you do with the equity that's in that house. So depending on how much equity you have, you can pull some of that equity with the home equity loan, and you can use that money to, I don't know, you could go on a vacation, you could buy a motorhome if that's your dream. Um, there's a lot of different things that you can do, a lot of different ways to look at that money, but the money is just potential. It's not really doing anything for you when it's sitting in the house. So the 3.5% rate, that might just be keeping you from looking at the opportunities that you have sitting in your house just waiting for you. So next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about, is this your last family Christmas in the house? This is the 6-month timeline that nobody talks about. And basically, what we're going to be talking about is when is the best time to list your house if you're thinking about selling it? When are the most properties on the market? What are the benefits of each time of year? And, how long does it really take to get your house ready to sell? And obviously, 6 months is the clue there, how long we think it's going to be. So, um, that's it. Does anybody have any questions tonight? If not, I want to thank you guys for joining me. And we have a whole bunch more seminars coming up, and there's a variety of different topics. And hope to see you guys in some of the other ones. And if there's anything you'd like to see, we're always open to suggestions. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Goodbye.